Right. Welcome everyone to the National Wetland Awards for 2022 as we recognize the winner in the category Education and Skills Development, Althea Grundling. Good morning, Althea, and congratulations.
Good morning, Mark, and everyone. Thank you very much. It was a big surprise, but thank you. And thank you for having this interview with me.
It's a pleasure. Althea, just a couple of questions just to get to know you and who and what you are. So the first question is, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up and what was the education path that you happened to take to get you to where you are today?
So I think it all happened when we moved from Boksburg to the Lowveld when I was a teenager.
Okay.
In high school. So we then moved to Hazyview, and I had to go to boarding school in White River.
Okay, yeah.
And because we stayed in Hazyview, we were very close to the Kruger National Park. And obviously that was, it opened up a whole window of nature and processes. And so I think my love started there for nature and for the environment. So it was because of that move my parents made that actually put me on a path. And it was, I can remember when we had a veld school at Graskop.
Yeah.
No, it was not Graskop. Let me just think. It was Pelgrimsrus.
Yes.
We were on a veld school, and one of the nature conservation people came to give us a talk. And she had these painted cans. The one was blue, one green, one brown, and she stashed them all together. And she said, this is now our abiotic factors, the water, the soil, everything there. And then on top of that is the green, the vegetation. So if you take one away, everything collapses.
Sure.
And just that evening, I decided this is what I would like to do one day.
Okay, that's fascinating. I mean, you talk about the Graskop Sabi Pilgrim's Rest area. I think it's not just so much a bucket list for a lot of us that have been involved in the environment and conservation and wetlands and things like that. I mean, I used to go through that area a lot as well during my education time as well. So I know it as well. It is a well area to go through. It is beautiful. I mean, Hazyview is stunning as well. So no wonder that got you on the path. From that, okay, so you were young and in Hazyview. After school and things like that, where did you move to in terms of education?
So I didn't know what I wanted to study. And my parents really pull their hair out of their head because I need to go to university, but I don't know what to study. And eventually they just dropped me off at the hostel Erika at Pretoria. So I came to the University of Pretoria, and I had this little booklet where I had to choose my subjects, and I said definitely geography. I like geology, and I can use the books of my cousin in botany, so I'll take botany. So I did a BSc. That's how it started. Sure. And then from the BSc, obviously you then find your way. Then it was botany actually that I did my honors in ecology, botany ecology, and then eventually started working at the Transvaal Streek Department of Agriculture at that time in 1991.
Gosh.
In the GIS section.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. But as a student, worked at the Council for Geoscience, and student work, I had to map wetlands on aerial photos. And that was before digitization. You first had to do it with a pen on an aerial photo, and then it goes to the GIS section, and then they digitize all these polygons. So it was a long process. But I mean, that's where I also started to become involved in the mapping and identification of wetlands in a landscape scale.
That's fascinating. I mean, the second question I was going to ask you was what inspired your interest in wetlands, but you've answered that. So, if you look back on the education path that you took, do you think you just ended up in wetlands as such, or do you think that innate environmental want in you really pushed you into that field? Do you think you would have gone into anything different in the environmental field other than wetlands?
Yes, I think it's when you're a student, you also use opportunities that come your way. And
Yeah,
that was the opportunities.
yeah,
If it was something else, maybe I also looked at fossils and other things like that. But the opportunity presented
yeah,
itself, and that gives you a platform. And from that platform, it opens another door and it opens another door. So that is
yeah.
actually like a meandering river.
Oh,
You
brilliant.
go from this
Yes.
one direction totally in a different
Yeah.
direction and then in another direction, but if you look at the big scale, you actually
You're
move
going in
from
the
A
boat.
to B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Okay. Tell us a little bit about the organization that you work for now. What is it that you do there, and what does the organization do?
So I started working at the Agricultural Research Council in 2003 as a master student. I was a
Okay.
student on a
Yeah.
project. That's how I started. You know why? Because when my two daughters were born, when Renee was born, the eldest, I decided to stay at home.
Okay.
Then later on, Amy came and I was at home for 7 years until they
Wow.
went to school. So
Okay.
that was for me to get back into the academic environment and the work environment was a huge learning curve again. And
Yeah.
the only way I could get in was to become a student again.
Brilliant.
So I started in 2003, then eventually got a position as a researcher, eventually a senior researcher, and then currently I'm the research team manager for the water science unit.
Okay.
And our name is now changed. So we are the Agricultural Research Council, Natural Resources and Engineering.
Okay.
But we are based at Soil, Climate and Water campus here in Arcadia.
Just
It's just behind the union buildings.
okay. All right. Then just adding on just quickly, why the engineering aspect added to the name?
Because we merged with the agricultural engineers and they are
Okay.
situated in Silverton. So we now fall under this umbrella,
Okay.
basically the two
Okay.
together, natural
Brilliant.
resources and engineering. So we have a lot in common where we can contribute and help one another on projects.
That's actually fascinating that you've got almost the hard construction aspects of engineering with, I'm not minimizing it, the softer aspects of the environment, and bringing the two together is always that tricky aspect of what can development do, but in respect of the environment to make sure that we protect everything. So yeah, it must be good working with the engineers who, work on a straight line and then 90 degrees and then build something that way. And why would you want to go through the wetland? But no, yeah, fascinating stuff. Okay, what is your favorite wetland type and where is it located?
Sure. I just came back from Tembe Elephant Park yesterday.
Okay, yeah,
So for me, I think that interdune settings of Maputoland Coastal Plain
yes,
is my favorite.
uh,
So you have these different depression types
yeah.
from a depression that's linked with the groundwater, or you have these depressions that's totally linked with the groundwater. So for me, I think that's my favorite because you've got these varieties.
Althea, you mentioned groundwater. It's one of the sciences that I think not a lot of us know a lot about, except for the groundwater specialists as such. And it is becoming such an important resource that we need to understand properly. It's difficult to understand it because it's underground as such. How did you become involved in the actual groundwater aspect of the science and the research that you do? Because I've known that that's an interest that you have. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the groundwater aspects of your research or what it is that you find interesting and what you do.
So first of all, one of the components of my PhD was to map wetlands and then to see over years which ones are permanently wet and which ones are only seasonally wet. So obviously why the permanently wet systems on the Maputo Land Coastal Plateau, they are linked with the groundwater. And in these systems, you find the peat accumulation as well. So because of the peat type, peatlands, we also had to try and figure out the groundwater movement in these systems. Where does the groundwater come from? Does it flow from east to west or north to south? And so the source. So to do that, we put in transects through the wetlands, and then we install wells and piezometers, which we then monitor over time so that we can have this picture to see what the water does. Where does the water flow in and flow out? And basically, if you know that, then you know how the system works. If you know that, then obviously the management aspects flow out of that, because then you can make a more informed decision on how to manage the system.
Difficult,
but also it's linked to what happens in the catchments as well.
Yeah, it's always difficult though to get that good grasp of understanding how that underground water moves. So yeah, it's always an interest to me as well to know what is going on below ground. Yes, because it informs what happens above ground. But I think sometimes what we actually find out is happening below ground is quite mind-blowing. You think you have an idea where the water is moving or the response of the vegetation over here is because of that. But then when you map it, as you say, it gives you another direction to go in. Okay. Can I ask you what has been the highlight of your career so far, Dr. Althea Grundling?
I guess the day when I got my PhD, I think that was the biggest highlight, because it was something I never thought that I would pursue. It was again an opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and it was an opportunity for me and Piet Louis to do it together. So it's either you're going to use it or lose it, or you're going to... And through that, it was a very difficult time because we had to sacrifice a lot. We even had to take the kids with us to Canada and to KwaZulu-Natal, take them out of schools. So I guess for them, it was just also a huge learning curve. But I think if you look back, it was worthwhile.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, worth the while, but you can't tell it to somebody going through the process. It's
no.
a process. And it's a difficult process sometimes because it's funding, it's time, it's family, it's the very remote study areas, challenges with data, access to the site. So it's just a whole bunch of stuff. So I think that was the biggest highlight for me.
That's brilliant. Just going back to what you said earlier on, that you were this young teenager in Hazyview and your parents had moved there. How did your parents take it when you actually got a PhD? How did they take it, knowing what you've gone through as well, but also for yourself, for them to see what you had achieved?
I think they were relieved the day I got the PhD because they had to help. They were the support base. They sometimes had to carry, come with us in holidays and look after the kids and cook food and, help with reading through manuscripts and things like that. But my mom, I think the biggest shock for her was when I was in my overalls in a soil pit. And she said, "Did we pay all this money for you to be a laborer?" And so the connection between the field work and then eventually writing up and then being a doctor, I think for her that was also a big mind shift, because sometimes you think, it's the person's a doctor, but you don't really know what it takes to become that doctor, especially if it's in a natural environment.
No, that's true.
Natural sciences.
Then asking, maybe it's a bit of a couched question. Do you feel that you needed the PhD? This leads on to the next question because it relates to what advice do you have for young up-and-coming wetlanders? It's important for them to understand that it doesn't have to always be the PhD. I have an MSc and I found that that was enough for me and it has done me well, so that is fine. You've got the PhD. There are quite a few people in the field that have a PhD. How do you balance that off with do you feel it was necessary to have to get there? And then with that second question, what would you say for the up-and-coming wetlanders today on how to approach a career and education and looking for work in the field of wetlands?
So first of all, I work in a research environment, and that obviously is you need a PhD to become a researcher. Especially now they've changed. So to appoint a researcher, the person must have a PhD.
Okay.
So that's the first thing, especially in a research environment like us, Agricultural Research Council. The second thing is you need to, before you just jump into something, you need to know and really go and think about it. What is it that you want to do your PhD in? Because that passion must carry you through, through the hard times.
Yeah.
So you can't just get something, somebody else hands you over something. If your heart and soul is not in it, then it's going to be very difficult to take it through. And then the third question was the advice that you want to give.
Yes.
I don't know if I've touched on that.
Yeah. What advice would you give to young wetlanders that are looking at going into university or are at university currently doing a BSc, etc.? How focused should they be on doing the education component or getting to a BSc with honors or masters and finding that's enough to possibly go into the work field that way?
I think parallel to just the education is the experience.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I find with students that did all those subjects, the day you take them into the wetland, some love it and some hate it.
Yeah.
Because it's a very difficult environment to work. Just imagine yourself in gumboots, sloshing through these very tall vegetation and taking peat samples and water samples. So it's especially now when we work in the agriculture environment, some of the students doing wetland work, they say this is the most hard work ever because of it's physical, tough. So not everybody likes that environment. So you must really know that if you want to go into wetlands, you'll have to go into areas that's not always so nice to walk in, and it's difficult. And then teamwork. Yes. You have to rely on a very good team to support you because you can't do that alone.
No,
it's just too much to carry all the equipment and the samples out and in. So a very good team is very important. But I think experience, you need to do it parallel with your subjects, do the experience as well so that you can then find your niche. If it's just to stand on the side and you do a vegetation survey or you do a wetland delineation, or is it that you want to do transects through or to look at the hydrology? Because wetlands are so multidisciplinary. You don't have to go in the swamps. You can do wetland work if you maybe do remote sensing, and you do have to do the verification, of course, but it's not so intense like when you do the hydrology studies and other things like that.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Okay, so now that's the official part of the interview done. Because we know you and we know Piet Louis, I'm going to ask you this next question. How did you and Piet Louis meet? What's the story behind that?
It wasn't in a wetland at all. It was in Namibia. It was Southwest Africa at that time.
Yeah.
It was in the year when there was elections.
Okay.
When we met. So we were both students at the University of Pretoria in geology, and the geology department decided that winter holiday, June, July, we're going for 3 weeks to Namibia
Okay.
to look at geology and rocks.
Yeah.
So we didn't know each other at all, but during this excursion, we met each other, and then he asked me to marry him. So, and the reason why it was so quick is there wasn't time to go on a date and you have nice clothes on. You're in the field and you're full of dust and there's no water. So you could learn each other very quickly under very difficult circumstances. What's the character and the personality of this person?
I think
that's where we met. We were very young.
Yeah.
I wasn't even 21.
Gosh.
Luke was very young. So we got married at the University of Pretoria, still when we were students. So wow. I was 22 and I think he turned 25.
Gosh, okay, now that's a backstory that's going to go viral, which I think is fascinating. I just love the way you described it. You said you went on an excursion, you were there for 3 weeks, and then you got married. Well, okay.
No, not married on the excursion. No. He just asked me. No, we got married only a year and a half later, but yeah.
No, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I love that story. So thank you very much for that. Althea, thank you so much for your time. Just lastly, any closing comments you want to make just before we finish off this interview?
I just want to thank everybody involved in the Indaba, making it happen. You know, I just want to say nothing just happens.
Yeah.
It's made to happen.
Yeah.
And you need that enthusiastic people and people that go the extra mile, because it's after hours work. It's a lot of admin, a lot of emails, a lot of organization. And we really appreciate that, because we are all so swamped with work. It's for that to make it happen. So thank you. Thank you for making it happen. For everybody, the whole committee, everybody behind the scenes. Yeah. Thank you.
That's really lovely to hear. You're quite right. It does take a lot of work and effort, and I think we're going to reap the benefits of that meeting in a couple of weeks' time at the Indaba face-to-face. So I think people are really going to enjoy it. Althea, it's been absolutely fun and a real buzz talking to you this morning. So thank you for your time. We do appreciate it, and also thank you for the anecdotes and the other insights into you. And congratulations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to you all.